Okay, I'm going to try and rush through this because I think Cassidy might be waking up. Hi everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today is sort of my first video actually talking about things. My last two videos were kind of an introduction to the channel in general. So let's get right into it. Today I'm going to be talking about my wedding day. This is inspired by one of my blog posts that I posted a very long time ago. It was one of my first posts on the blog. And I'm actually still very proud of it. I think it was written pretty well and I just want to share it in video format. But if you are interested in reading it, I will post the link in the description down there. The reason I wanted to talk about my wedding day is because as someone with anxiety, wedding days can be extremely stressful. And for me in particular, one of my big things is that when I have, I guess a panic attack is what I call it, I often will faint. And it's turned into a thing where thinking, what if I faint, then makes me panic and then I might faint. So my big fear for my wedding day was, oh my God, what if I faint at the altar? And the whole thing just leading up to it, there was a lot of stress, but at the same time, it was the greatest day of my life. Almost. Having Cassidy is probably tied, but I wasn't in as much pain on my wedding day, so there was that. So for me, a lot of the times fainting is caused by exposures to things that cause me a lot of anxiety, and that's been mostly medical things. I have a severe needle phobia, and hearing about graphic medical things has always sort of given me the heebie-jeebies, so to speak, and it just... ugh. The first time actually that I remember fainting in public, I was in 7th grade, and we were in health class, and I blamed this on the fact that maybe it's because I didn't eat breakfast that morning, which was not good. But the teacher was talking in very, very detailed explanation about the symptoms of an STI. And I just started feeling woozy. I laid my head down, and next thing I know, I was opening my eyes, I was on the floor, there were 2 teachers over top of me, and the whole class staring at me. So that was fun. Not. So yeah, after that, I've fainted a few times in public, and for me it's a really embarrassing thing. I hate when it happens. Almost to a point where I'm more stressed about what if I faint than I am stressed about what's causing the initial panic, if that makes sense. Anyway, back to the wedding day. Before the wedding, I was Googling a lot about how to not be anxious for your wedding. I was Googling anxious bride, dealing with anxiety at your wedding. Not really a whole lot of advice I found out there, especially pertaining to having a panic attack at the altar or fainting at the altar. A lot of the suggestions that I was given was to have a very small ceremony. And I didn't want that. I have been looking forward to getting married my whole life, and I didn't want to let down, you know, my inner little girl who was just super excited to have this wedding, and I wanted it to be kind of big and spectacular and in front of as many people that I love in my life as possible. So I didn't think it was necessary, and to be honest, I don't think the amount of people would have changed anything, because the few people that would have been there would have still been enough people that I wouldn't want to faint in front of them. I talked a lot with my friends, some family, people I was comfortable with at the time, talking about this stuff. And I was also in a cognitive behavioral therapy group thing at the hospital, and I talked to them too. And mostly everyone tried to reassure me that you'll most likely be fine, it's all good, blah blah blah. And a few people even said, you know what, even if you faint, is it the biggest deal? It might even be a funny story. And to that I just say, it's not a funny story, not for me. Like, haha, the bride's mental illness made a mockery of her at her wedding day. Like, no, I don't like that. I don't want it. And I don't want it to come off like I'm really uptight and I can't laugh at myself, because I absolutely can. It's just, this is not a subject that I find funny for me because it's something I've struggled with for a long time. That being said, the night before the wedding, when I was hanging out with my bridesmaids, my sister, who was one of my bridesmaids, asked me, hey, if you fall down and trip while you're walking down the aisle and I laugh at you, will you be mad at me? Because I don't think I can help it. Because at the time we were practicing walking in our shoes and we were talking about, oh my God, I hope we don't trip on the aisle. And I said to her, you know what, I would probably laugh too, so it's all good. Didn't happen. I did not fall down, which is good because my heels were this big. They were beautiful though, and I got a really good deal on them. But that's something I could laugh at. Something to do with, you know, my mental illness and feeling like I'm being judged. It's just not funny to me, especially at that time. I was a lot less comfortable with myself and with my struggles than I am now. The night before the wedding, we had the rehearsal, which was really, really helpful for me. In cognitive behavioral therapy, I'm going to call CBT from now on. In CBT, I learned about how exposure to things can help you decrease your anxiety over time. And it's something I have often kind of already knew and experienced. The more I rode the subway when I first moved to Toronto, the less anxious I got about it. A little bit of a claustrophobia issue there. Cassidy is awake, but I'm gonna see how long I can stretch this. She's fine. Anyway, so the rehearsal dinner was a great exposure therapy for me. The first run through was petrifying, even though it was just like our parents and our bridal party who were there. I was standing in the back with my dad and the bridesmaids, and they each went out one by one. And I think that's one thing that makes it really, really nerve-wracking for almost any bride, is the fact that you're standing at the back just waiting and waiting because your bridal party all goes first. And anticipation causes a lot more anxiety than the actual event in most cases, even for me. And I know this, and it still doesn't help knowing that. But yeah, so I was standing in the back, waiting and waiting, and then when it was my turn to go out, we went out, and I walked kind of too fast, but my dad was also walking kind of too fast. We kind of didn't really hold each other back. I think we were both nervous. So we got up there, and I got in front of my now husband, and right away I had the feeling, what if you fainted right now? This thought just pops into my head at random times. And it's always like when I'm in the middle of doing something that I think could be potentially triggering, but not necessarily. Like, this thought even popped into my mind when I was trying on wedding dresses for the first time. No idea why. Why would I faint right then? There's nothing scary about trying on wedding dresses, and I love trying on dresses. It's like my industry right there. So, no idea, but then I got my wave of anxiety that just runs through my body, and I had to kind of breathe through it, and I had an easier time then because I kept reminding myself, I'm literally just trying on dresses, calm down. But this time, I don't know, being in front of all these people, I don't know why. Parents, I've always been a little nervous in front of with talking about these things and with them knowing about these things. I hadn't really opened up to my mom yet about my struggles, and Keegan's family didn't really know much about it either, so I just really did not want to have to deal with it in front of all of them. Fortunately, I was able to power through. I grabbed Keegan's hands and was just sort of focusing on him and trying to like hyper focus on what the minister was saying so that my mind was kind of distracted. See, my issue with that thought popping into my head is the physical feelings that come after it. It's when I start to panic. And panicking can cause me to feel very dizzy and lightheaded, and my vision gets a little blurry. And that's why it can be really difficult to deal with, because you never know when the fainting is going to happen, and it makes it really stressful for me. Normally, if I feel this way, if I'm around someone who I'm comfortable with, I can tell them, like, I don't feel good, I have to lay down, or I have to sit down, and I couldn't do that in this situation. I have to go get Cassidy. I was hoping she'd sleep longer. Okay, I just came back. I had to get Cassidy up from her nap because she started crying, but she is sitting in her little chair just kind of behind you, watching the TV that I have on mute. So you shouldn't hear that, but you might hear the occasional baby noise. So let's get back into it. The night before the wedding, after the rehearsal and after the rehearsal dinner, was a really interesting night. It was very emotional, very happy, exciting, stressful, just so many different things going through my mind. I spent the night at my grandma's house with my bridesmaids. Two of my bridesmaids, my sister went back home to my parents' house to sleep. I had a really, really, really hard time falling asleep that night, as anyone can imagine. And also, just like every Christmas morning, I was awake at 5, and there was no chance of me getting back to sleep. Which is fine. I mean, I like waking up early anyway, but that day I kind of wished I had a little more sleep. That being said, if you have a wedding coming up and you're worried about getting enough sleep during the night, don't worry too much. The adrenaline really kind of pushes you through the day. So in the morning, when I woke up at 5, I got up because I knew my grandma would be up anyway. And I went downstairs and hung out with her. It was kind of just like any other time I had slept over there, which was a lot. I always loved sleeping over at her house when I was a kid. I'd get up really early with her in the morning and we would talk, and it was nice and peaceful. So we just chatted, waited for everyone else to wake up, and then after they did and my mom and sister came over, we went to go and get our hair and makeup done. Now, on the way over is when my first moment of panic kind of came through. And we were just in the car. I was sitting in the front seat, my mom was driving, and the thought came through my head like, oh my God, this is it, this is happening. And I started just trying to breathe nice and slow, and my mom looked over at me and was like, are you okay? And I was just like, yeah, I'm fine, whatever. You know, didn't want to tell her I was having a mini panic attack. But once we got in there and started, you know, talking with the hairstylists and our makeup person, I kind of felt a lot better. I was more focused on having fun with my girls and my mom and the other people. The person we had doing our makeup was an Arbonne consultant, which I was/am also. So we had a lot to chat about too, and it was a really fun time. And the hairstylist did a really good job on all of us. It was interesting seeing my sister with her makeup and hair all done, because she's not really into that too often. So when we got back to my grandma's house, the photographers were there, a lot of people from my family were there. It was really great. It was a lot of fun. We just had a quick lunch, got into our dresses, and then started taking pictures out in front of the house. And we had a lot of fun doing that. It was a lot of just me, a lot of me and the bridesmaids. Then we did some family pictures. And then the limo showed up and I took some pictures with that as well. Then we got into the limo. It was time to head over. The photographers had left a little earlier so that they could go do a few photos with Keegan and the guys. And we got into the limo. The limo driver said, you know, we still have plenty of time. Do you want to stop at Tim Hortons? And we were like, yeah, sure, that sounds good. Super Canadian thing to do on your wedding day. When we got into the limo and started driving, that is when my next moment of panic hit me. And that one just sort of stayed consistent with me the rest of the time until the ceremony. After we stopped at Tim Hortons, my matron of honor ran in to get us what we wanted. I ordered a peppermint tea. even though it was 1,000 degrees out, because I was just hoping that the peppermint tea would settle my stomach, because now my stomach is getting all blah on me. And I just really needed something to help, but it didn't really help very much. And I was worried about being dehydrated and that contributing to needing to faint, but then at the same time I was also worried about drinking too much right before the ceremony, because I didn't want to suddenly have to use the washroom in the middle of the ceremony and be like squirming up there. Wouldn't have been fun. One thing I will say though, even though it was 1,000 degrees out, I was very thankful for it, because the day before they were expecting a thunderstorm to happen during the ceremony, and I didn't want to be running into the church in my dress in the pouring rain. And I also wanted to get these beautiful pictures, because my theme was kind of a springtime garden theme. I wanted a lot of pictures outdoors. I didn't want a wedding outdoors, because I didn't want to have to deal with those logistics, especially if it did start to rain, but I was still very set on having pictures done outside. So I'm very thankful that we were able to get that done, despite the fact that it was really hot. So when we got to the church, we went right down to the basement and went right into the waiting room. I grew up going to this church, so I was very familiar with the surroundings, which I think was helpful, although a lot had changed since then. But it was still an area I knew, and I knew how to get around inside the church and everything, so I think that really helped. So I guess that's a tip. Cassidy just coughed. Anyway, yeah, that's sort of a tip. If you have a lot of anxiety around getting married, then I would recommend maybe doing it if you did go to a church or go to any kind of place where it could be a wedding venue when you were younger. The nostalgia and the familiarity did help a lot. So after we got ourselves sort of settled into the room we were waiting in, the anxiety was really setting in, and I was becoming a lot more vocal about it, because all of my bridesmaids knew that I struggled with anxiety, and they were very helpful and wonderful, and I love them so much. Janine, Kristen, and my sister Laura, you guys are the best, and I love you so much. They really helped me a lot and tried to keep me calm. They helped me when I needed to go use the washroom, which I made sure to do right before the ceremony because of how much I was drinking. As I mentioned earlier, we just sort of hung out, and it's just the waiting and waiting until we're ready to go. The minister came down and told us, okay, we are ready to go. The guys are standing at the altar. Let's do this. And just whoosh, the wave of anxiety goes through me. Cassidy is playing with a toy, and I apologize, that noise in the background. I forgot that was attached to her chair, and it's kind of loud. She never plays with it either, but anyway. Waiting at the back of the church this time, wearing the dress, and my dad is back there, the bridesmaids are back there. It was very overwhelming. I could kind of see a little bit into the church, see all the people, and oh my gosh, I was almost hyperventilating. I also didn't really want to show my dad too much of this panicky side of me, but it was fine. Bridesmaids all went out one at a time. I just sat there, waited for my musical cue. It was about to happen. I just took one deep breath and was like, you're just gonna do this. This is just gonna happen. So it started, and we turned the corner and started walking down the aisle. And in that moment, I actually felt like the anxiety kind of went away. Just for that walk, but it was amazing. I was walking down the aisle, I was looking right and left, back and forth at all these people staring at me and thinking, my God, I love all of these people. Most of them, I'm kidding. And they were all looking so happy, and it was just wonderful. And then halfway down the aisle, I thought to myself, maybe I should look at my fiance. Hadn't even noticed, looked straight ahead. I was just so busy looking everywhere and just taking it all in. And I looked up at him and he was crying, and I was like, yes, I made him cry. And after that, I kind of just focused on him the rest of the way up. Kind of glanced over because as we got to the front is where a lot of like the even closer family and friends were. We got to the front and my dad and Keegan shook hands, and I took Keegan's arm. I handed my bouquet to my matron of honor, Janine, and we got started. And holding onto Keegan's hand, sort of for support, to feel stable, then it sort of hit me, oh my God, you're getting married right now. But I luckily didn't really get that anxious about it. I think once I was in it, it felt a lot less stressful and almost relieving in a way, like, okay, it's almost over. This is good. After the ceremony and the rest of the day was just awesome. I think once I got past that hurdle of, you know, I'm not fainting at the altar anymore. Once that was over, that risk or whatever was done, we had so much fun. We went to a park to take pictures with the bridal party. Before that, we took pictures with family at the church. There were a lot of trees around, so we got really nice pictures. And even though it was so hot out in my big puffy dress, I just didn't care. I had such a great time. And then when we got back, we hung out sort of in a back room, waited to be announced into the reception. We had some hors d'oeuvres served to us, and it was kind of nice to just relax in an air-conditioned space, just the bridal party, kind of de-stress a bit and prepare for the really fun night. And after that, we were called into we were told we were going to be announced, and they announced the bridesmaids and the groomsmen, and then me and Keegan went in and we went and had dinner. At that point, I think because of all the excitement of the day and with how hot it was, and my dress was already feeling a little tight, I think because of how hot it was, plus I had gained a bit of weight right before the wedding, it actually worked out well. My dress was too big when it came in, and then it fit perfectly right before the wedding, so you know, whatever. Anyway, we ate. I was so excited about the food, really excited about the food, and then when we started eating, I got full so fast. So I'm a little bummed, but I'm glad I got to eat it. After dinner and after the first dance and the father-daughter dance, I went and changed into a much shorter dress that was still white. It looked very bridal. It was lace. It was a really fun dress. And it made dancing and moving around a lot easier. I didn't have to worry about going to the bathroom anymore and needing help. And then we went out to the golf course. Our reception was at a golf club, and we took some more pictures in my little short dress. Still had my veil on. It's funny, I didn't want a veil at first, but then once I got one, I loved it and I wanted to wear it every day. Like if I could just wear a veil every day, I would. But that's just me. Our wedding was just the best day. One of the best days of my life. It had a lot of trips and falls and little accidents here and there. My mom tripped coming out of the church. One of our groomsmen fell off like the elevated stage thing that we were all sitting on. His chair went off. He hit his head on the speaker. Scared everyone. My dress knocked over a light. So yeah, it was a very interesting day. It was not a perfect wedding by any means, but it was the perfect wedding that I could have asked for, and it was just a wonderful day, and I am so happy now, years later. Me and Keegan are just having a great life together. We've now made a beautiful daughter together. We have our 4 beautiful pets, and I'm just so happy we had that day, and I can't wait to see what the future continues to hold for us.